My own daughter had security drag me out of her wedding reception. I'm Rebecca Harland, 56 years old, and I spent 35 years as a registered nurse at Cook County Hospital in Chicago saving lives. But on July 20th, 2025, my daughter Jasmine stood in front of 200 wedding guests and said, "Mom's having one of her episodes. She needs to leave before she ruins everything." What Jasmine didn't know as those security guards escorted me out of the Riverside Gardens ballroom was that I'd discovered everything. The $87,000 she'd stolen from my investment accounts, the nursing home applications she'd filed in my name, the lies she'd told her fiancé Kevin about my mental state. See, Jasmine made one critical mistake. She assumed her dying mother was too sick to fight back, too weak to investigate, too desperate for family connection to expose her own daughter's betrayal. She thought stage 4 ovarian cancer had made me powerless. But cancer doesn't make you stupid. It makes you focused. And for the past 3 months, I'd been very focused on exactly what my daughter was planning to do with my $2.3 million estate. What happened after those security guards walked me to my car will show you that terminal illness doesn't mean you surrender your dignity. Sometimes it means you finally stop pretending everything's fine. Some of you might have heard pieces of this story. It's been discussed in a few Chicago senior advocacy groups, shared in some nursing forums about elder financial abuse. Hit that subscribe button and let me know where you're watching from, especially if you've ever been betrayed by the child you sacrificed everything for. This is how a dying nurse taught her daughter that love without respect is just exploitation wearing a family name. Let me back up, give you the whole picture. February 12th, 2025. Dr. Sarah Chen delivered the diagnosis in her calm clinical voice. Stage 4 ovarian cancer. Metastatic. 8 to 12 months. Median survival. I sat in that oncology office at Northwestern Memorial, staring at scan images showing tumors scattered through my abdomen like deadly flowers. I thought about Andre, my husband who died of a heart attack 6 years ago at 52 while I was working a double shift. Thought about how I'd promised him I'd slow down after he was gone, spend more time with Jasmine, but the hospital always needed one more nurse, one more shift, one more emergency. I drove home to my house in Chatham, the modest 3-bedroom I'd bought in 1995, for $87,000, now worth $520,000, in Chicago's changing South Side market. Jasmine was supposed to visit that weekend to help me organize the garage. She canceled via text. "Mom, something came up. Kevin and I have plans. Rain check?" Rain check. My daughter was 28, working as a hospital billing coordinator making $52,000 a year, living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Pilsen she could barely afford. I wanted to tell her about the cancer in person, not over the phone. Wanted to hold her, be held, share this terror with the only family I had left. But Jasmine was busy. She was always busy. 2 weeks passed. Then Jasmine called with news that surprised me. "Mom, Kevin proposed. We're engaged." Kevin Porter. Pharmaceutical sales rep, 30 years old, clean-cut and ambitious. I'd met him 4 times over the 18 months they'd been dating. Nice enough man, though something about his eagerness to discuss my retirement plans always felt slightly off. "That's wonderful, baby. When's the wedding?" "Next summer, June 2026. We want a big celebration, garden venue, about 200 guests. 15 months to plan seemed reasonable. I had time to tell her about the cancer, time to prepare her emotionally, time to get my affairs in order without rushing. But I should have known. Nothing about the next 5 months would be reasonable. March brought the first strange change. Jasmine started asking detailed questions about my finances. "Mom, have you thought about estate planning? You're 56. We should make sure everything's organized." She said it casually, like she was just being responsible. But Jasmine had never asked about my money before. had never seemed interested in anything beyond whether I could lend her cash for rent when she came up short. I have a will, baby. Everything's handled. But what about medical directives? Power of attorney? What if something happens and you can't make decisions? What if something happens, like she was preparing for an emergency that hadn't occurred yet, or preparing for one she knew was coming? April 3rd, I discovered the first nursing home brochure. It was sitting on my kitchen counter after Jasmine visited, partially hidden under a stack of mail. Lakeside Manor Senior Living. $5,800 per month for memory care. The brochure was dog-eared, marked with notes in Jasmine's handwriting. Medicaid beds available, 18-month wait list. I called her that evening. Jasmine, why do you have nursing home brochures? Long pause. Oh, that's for a patient at work. Hospital discharge planning project. But I'd been a nurse for 35 years. I knew how discharge planning worked. Billing coordinators didn't research nursing homes, social workers did. And Lakeside Manor was nowhere near the hospital where Jasmine worked. April 28th brought the second red flag. Jasmine arrived unannounced with a manila folder full of legal documents. Power of attorney forms, healthcare directives, property transfer papers, all pre-filled with her name as my designated agent. Mom, I consulted with a lawyer. We need to get these signed, just precautionary. I looked at the dates on the papers. They'd been prepared 3 weeks earlier, before she'd even mentioned them to me. Precautionary for what? You're getting older. Dad died suddenly at 52. I don't want to be caught unprepared if something happens to you too. Andre's death haunted both of us. He'd called me that afternoon 6 years ago, said he felt chest pressure, asked if I could come home from my shift early. I told him I couldn't leave. We were understaffed. 3 hours later, our neighbor found him collapsed in our living room. By the time the paramedics arrived, he'd been gone for over an hour. Jasmine was 22 then, fresh out of college. She'd taken a week off her new job for the funeral, then gone back to her life. But something had changed in how she looked at me after that. Like she couldn't decide if Andre's death was tragedy or my fault. I didn't sign those papers. Told Jasmine I needed time to review them with my own lawyer. Her face tightened, that flush creeping up her neck that I recognized from childhood. The anger she tried to hide, but never quite managed. Mom, I'm trying to help you. Why are you making this difficult? I'm not making anything difficult. I'm being careful. There's a difference. She left without saying goodbye. For 2 weeks, she didn't call, didn't text. Radio silence that felt like punishment for not immediately surrendering control of my life. May 1st, everything accelerated. Jasmine called with news that made no sense. Mom, we're moving the wedding up. July 20th, instead of June 2026. That's less than 3 months away. Why the rush? The venue had a cancellation. Riverside Gardens. It's perfect. We can't pass it up. Riverside Gardens charged $45,000 just for the venue rental. I knew because Andre and I had looked at it for our 25th anniversary party before he died. Jasmine and Kevin together made $130,000 a year. After taxes and her expensive Pilsen rent, she should have been living paycheck to paycheck. Where was she getting wedding money? Jasmine, that's a lot to plan in 11 weeks. We can handle it. Kevin's family is helping with costs. That was the first direct lie I could prove. 2 days later, I ran into Kevin's mother Claire at the Whole Foods on 53rd. We'd met twice before at family dinners. Pleasant woman, kindergarten teacher, the kind who wore colorful scarves and talked about her students with genuine affection. Claire, Jasmine told me you're helping with the wedding costs. That's very generous. Her smile faltered. I'm sorry, what? We offered to pay for the rehearsal dinner, about $3,000. But Jasmine said they wanted to handle the wedding themselves. Said they had it covered. They had it covered. But how? I thanked Claire, finished my shopping, and drove home with a feeling like cold water in my stomach. Something was very wrong. That night, I did what I'd been avoiding for months. I logged into my investment accounts, the ones Andre's life insurance money had built after his death. The $1.8 million portfolio I'd carefully managed for 6 years, planning to leave it all to Jasmine when I was gone. My Vanguard account showed regular monthly withdrawals. $14,500 in March, $14,500 in April, $14,500 in May. Dividend distributions that should have been reinvesting were being redirected to an external account. I clicked through the transfer history. The receiving account was registered to Jasmine Marie Harland. My hands shook as I calculated. 3 months of redirected dividends, $43,500. But the wedding was still 2 months away. I checked February's statements. Another $14,500 withdrawn. January. Another $14,500. December 2024. Another $14,500. 6 months of theft. $87,000 total. Money that belonged to me, redirected to my daughter without my knowledge or permission. I sat in Andre's old office, the room I'd barely touched since he died, and tried to understand how this was possible. Then I remembered. The papers Jasmine had brought in April weren't the first documents she'd asked me to sign. Back in December, she'd shown up with what she called updated beneficiary forms for my investment accounts. Said the brokerage required new paperwork for estate planning purposes. I'd signed them because she was my daughter, because I trusted her, because the idea that she would steal from me was unthinkable. Those weren't beneficiary updates. They were account authorization forms. Jasmine had given herself access to redirect my dividend payments, had been systematically draining my investment income for half a year to fund a wedding I didn't even know was happening. I should have called her immediately, should have confronted her, demanded explanations. But I'd been a nurse long enough to know that when you suspect something terrible, you gather evidence first. Emotions can wait. Facts can't. May 15th, I scheduled an appointment with Helen Foster, an estate attorney whose office was 3 blocks from the hospital where I used to work. I brought printed statements, transfer records, the unsigned power of attorney documents Jasmine had left at my house. Helen reviewed everything in silence. Finally, she looked up, her expression carefully neutral in that way lawyers have when they're about to deliver bad news. "Rebecca, your daughter has been committing financial elder abuse. The account access she obtained through forged authorizations, the systematic withdrawal of funds, the pressure to sign power of attorney documents while concealing her theft, this is textbook exploitation. She's not some predator. She's my daughter. She's your daughter who's stolen $87,000 from you. The relationship doesn't change the crime." Crime. That word sat heavy between us. My daughter wasn't a criminal. She was Jasmine, the little girl who'd cried when I worked Christmas shifts, the teenager who'd begged me to attend her volleyball games, the young woman who'd sobbed at her father's funeral while I stood dry-eyed because I was too numb to feel anything. "There's more," Helen said gently. She slid another document across her desk. "I ran a background check on your daughter's name through public records. She filed a guardianship petition with Cook County Probate Court on April 20th. She's trying to have you declared mentally incompetent." The room tilted. "On what basis?" "The petition claims you have progressive dementia, that you've become unable to manage your finances or make sound decisions, that you require supervised care for your own safety." "I don't have dementia. I have cancer." "Does your daughter know about the cancer diagnosis?" That was the question, wasn't it? I'd been waiting for the right moment to tell Jasmine, waiting for things to calm down, waiting for her to have time to visit, waiting, always waiting for my daughter to have space for her dying mother. "I haven't told her yet." Helen's expression shifted to something like pity. Rebecca, I think your daughter accessed your medical records. If she works in hospital billing, she has access to patient information systems. She may have been monitoring your health status without your knowledge. The possibility that Jasmine had been tracking my medical records, that she knew about my cancer diagnosis before I could tell her myself, that knowledge felt like a betrayal sharper than the stolen money. Helen gave me a week to decide what I wanted to do: press charges, file for restraining order, contest the guardianship petition, or do nothing. Let Jasmine continue with whatever plan she'd constructed around my approaching death. I spent that week barely sleeping. Kept thinking about Andre's last phone call. How I'd chosen the hospital over him. How Jasmine had watched me make that choice her entire childhood. Every missed recital, every skipped birthday dinner, every promise to be home early that I'd broken because someone needed me at work. The patients always needed me more than my family did. Until Andre died alone, and Jasmine learned that being my daughter meant coming second. Maybe I deserved this. Maybe the $87,000 Jasmine took was payment for 28 years of emotional absence. Maybe her plan to warehouse me in a nursing home was justice for all the times I'd warehoused her with babysitters and after-school programs while I pulled double shifts. But then I found the laptop. Jasmine had left it at my house the previous weekend, forgotten on the kitchen counter. I told myself I was just going to charge it for her, leave it plugged in until she picked it up. But my hands opened it. My fingers found the browser still logged in. The search history told me everything I needed to know about my daughter's intentions. Average life expectancy, stage 4 ovarian cancer, Medicaid nursing home eligibility, Illinois. How long until probate court approves guardianship petition? Selling parents' house to pay for care. Does cancer qualify for expedited guardianship? She knew. Had known since at least March based on the search dates. Had known I was dying and had seen it as a timeline instead of a tragedy. But it was the open email tab that broke whatever remained of my maternal instinct to protect her. Subject line: Wedding budget final. Sent from Jasmine to Kevin, dated May 10th. I clicked it open. The email contained a detailed spreadsheet. Venue $45,000. Catering $18,000. Photography $8,500. Flowers $6,200. Dress $4,800. The total came to $94,000. At the bottom, Jasmine had written a note to Kevin. Don't worry about the money. Mom's dividend payments are covering everything. She'll never notice the withdrawals, and even if she does, what can she do? She's dying. The guardianship petition goes through in 6 weeks. After that, I control everything anyway. We get our dream wedding, and she gets professional care she clearly needs. Win-win. Win-win. My terminal cancer and her theft, framed as a mutually beneficial arrangement. I sat staring at those words until they blurred. Then I saw the attached document. Another email, this one from Kevin to Jasmine, dated 3 days earlier. Jasmine, I love you, but I'm not comfortable with this. Your mom worked her whole life for that money. Taking it without asking feels wrong. Can't we just have a smaller wedding we can actually afford? Jasmine's response was immediate. Kevin, my mother chose her career over her family for 35 years. She chose the hospital over my dad the day he died. She chose strangers over me every single day of my childhood. This money? She owes it to me. She owes me a childhood where my mother was actually present. She owes me a father who didn't die alone. This isn't theft. It's payment for damages. Payment for damages. That's what I was to my daughter. Not a person. Not her mother. Just a debt that needed settling. I closed the laptop carefully, plugged it in like I'd originally intended, and I made my decision. May 22nd, I called Helen Foster. I want to fight the guardianship petition. I want to expose what Jasmine's been doing, and I want to do it at her wedding. Rebecca, are you sure? This will destroy your relationship with your daughter permanently. Helen, there's no relationship left to destroy. She's been planning my institutionalization like it's a business transaction. She's stolen nearly $90,000 to fund a wedding I wasn't even invited to help plan. She's told her fiancé that my life's work, that my sacrifices, that everything I gave up was just me being selfish. The guardianship hearing is scheduled for June 18th, 1 month before the wedding. If you contest it, if you show up healthy and competent, the judge will dismiss the petition immediately. Jasmine will know you're onto her. Good. Let her know. Let her spend her last month before the wedding wondering what I'm going to do. Helen paused. There's something you should understand. If you pursue this publicly, if you expose Jasmine at her wedding, you'll be burning every bridge. She'll hate you. She might contest your will, claim undue influence, drag your name through legal proceedings for years. I have 8 to 12 months to live. I don't have years for her to drag anything through. Then what do you want the endgame to be? I thought about that question for a long time. What did I want? Revenge? Justice? Some acknowledgement that what Jasmine did was wrong? Or did I want something more complicated, something that felt increasingly impossible? I wanted my daughter back. The little girl who used to wait by the window for me to come home from shifts. The teenager who'd forgiven me for missing her volleyball games because I was saving lives. The young woman who'd hugged me at Andre's funeral and whispered, "We still have each other." But that daughter was gone, had maybe never existed outside my hopeful imagination. This daughter, the one stealing my money and planning my incarceration, this was who Jasmine really was. Or maybe this was who I'd created by choosing everyone else over her for 28 years. I want her to understand what she's done, I finally said. I want her to face consequences, and I want her to know that dying doesn't make you powerless. Helen nodded slowly. Then let's build your case. Starting with the guardianship hearing. We prove you're competent, expose her medical record violations, document the financial theft. Then we decide what happens at the wedding. June 18th, the Cook County Probate Court, Judge Michelle Torres presiding. Jasmine had dressed carefully for the hearing, professional blazer, and worried daughter expression. Jasmine's lawyer, a young man in an expensive suit who looked fresh out of law school, presented the guardianship petition with confidence. He described a woman, me, who was losing cognitive function, making irrational financial decisions, displaying confusion about basic daily tasks. He submitted affidavits from 2 of Jasmine's friends who claimed they'd witnessed my declining mental state during recent visits. I sat in the back of the courtroom listening to this fictional version of myself. A woman who supposedly couldn't remember what day it was, who left the stove on, who forgot conversations minutes after having them. None of it was true. All of it was strategically constructed to paint me as incompetent. Then Helen stood up. Your Honor, I'm representing Mrs. Harland in opposition to this petition. We request the court appoint an independent medical evaluator to assess my client's cognitive function. Judge Torres looked at me for the first time. Mrs. Harland, do you understand what's happening in this proceeding? Yes, Your Honor. My daughter is trying to have me declared incompetent so she can control my assets. I'm here to contest that petition. You seem quite articulate for someone allegedly suffering from dementia. That's because I don't have dementia, Your Honor. I have stage 4 ovarian cancer, terminal diagnosis, 8 to 12 months prognosis. But cancer doesn't affect cognitive function. My mind is perfectly clear. The courtroom went silent. I watched Jasmine's face across the room. She'd gone pale. Her lawyer whispered something urgent to her, but she didn't respond, just stared at me with an expression I couldn't read. Shock? Guilt? Or just anger that I'd revealed the truth before she could control the narrative? Judge Torres reviewed the petition again. The medical documentation submitted here claims progressive dementia. There's no mention of cancer. Helen handed the bailiff a folder. Your Honor, we're submitting Mrs. Harland's actual medical records from Northwestern Memorial Hospital, Signed release from her oncologist, Dr. Sarah Chen. As you'll see, there's no cognitive impairment documented anywhere in her chart. What there is, however, is evidence that the petitioner accessed these medical records illegally through her position at a hospital billing office. Jasmine's lawyer stood up quickly. Your Honor, we had no knowledge of any cancer diagnosis. My client was acting in good faith based on observed behavioral changes. Observed behavioral changes, or convenient fiction? Helen's voice was calm but cutting. We're also submitting financial records showing the petitioner has systematically stolen $87,000 from her mother's investment accounts over the past 6 months. The timing of this guardianship petition, filed just weeks after she began the theft, is not coincidental. This is financial elder abuse disguised as concerned caregiving. Judge Torres looked at Jasmine directly. Miss Harland, did you access your mother's medical records without authorization? Jasmine stood slowly. I work in hospital billing. I have legitimate access to patient records for insurance purposes. Your mother is not a patient at your facility, correct? Long pause. No, Your Honor, but I was concerned about her. I needed to know if something was medically wrong. So you committed a HIPAA violation. I was trying to help her. By stealing nearly $90,000? Judge Torres closed the file folder in front of her. This guardianship petition is denied. Mrs. Harland is clearly competent to manage her own affairs. Furthermore, I'm referring this case to the Illinois Department of Healthcare and Family Services for investigation of the alleged medical record violation and to the Cook County State's Attorney for potential elder abuse charges. Jasmine's face crumpled. Her lawyer started talking rapidly about appeals and misunderstandings, but Judge Torres was already moving to the next case. Helen guided me out of the courtroom before Jasmine could approach. But I heard her voice behind me, high and desperate. Mom, wait, please, let me explain. I stopped, turned around. My daughter stood in the courthouse hallway, mascara running, hands shaking. Kevin was beside her, his face a mixture of confusion and horror. He hadn't known. I could see that clearly. Whatever Jasmine had told him about her mother's declining mental state, he'd believed it. Explain what, Jasmine? Explain how you stole from me? Explain how you lied to Kevin? Explain how you found out I was dying and your first thought was how to profit from it? I wasn't trying to profit. I was trying to plan for your care. The nursing home applications were for when you got too sick to live alone. The nursing home applications were so you could liquidate my assets to qualify me for Medicaid. I found the research on your laptop, Jasmine. I read the emails. I know exactly what you were planning. Kevin's voice, quiet and shaken. Jasmine, what is she talking about? Jasmine didn't look at him, kept her eyes on me. Mom, I know you're angry, but you have to understand. Do you have any idea what it was like growing up with you as a mother? You were never there. Every birthday, every school event, every time I needed you, the hospital was more important. And then Dad died alone because you couldn't leave work for 3 hours. So this is about Andre? This is about you never putting your family first. This is about me spending my entire childhood competing with strangers for your attention. This is about you making money and building a career while I raised myself. I was providing for you. I was making sure you had a home, food, education, everything you needed. Except a mother. Jasmine's voice broke. I needed a mother, and you gave me money instead. So yes, when I found out you were dying, when I saw you had nearly $2.5 million saved up from a career you chose over your family, I thought maybe I deserved some of that. Maybe I earned it by spending 28 years as your second priority. Kevin was backing away from her slowly, like he was seeing someone he didn't recognize. Jasmine, you told me your mom was losing her mind. You said she needed help. You never mentioned stealing money, or cancer, or any of this. Because you wouldn't have understood. You grew up with parents who were there. You don't know what it's like to be invisible in your own home. I grew up with parents who taught me not to steal from dying people. That sentence landed like a slap. Jasmine turned to him, reaching out, but Kevin stepped further back. Don't. I need to think. I need to process what I'm hearing right now. He walked away, left Jasmine standing in that courthouse hallway with the ruins of her defense scattered around her feet. She looked back at me, tears streaming now. Are you happy? You just destroyed my engagement. I didn't destroy anything, Jasmine. You did that yourself. I didn't hear from Jasmine for 2 weeks after the guardianship hearing. No calls, no texts. Just silence that felt different from her previous punishing withdrawals. This wasn't anger. This was something colder, more calculated. Kevin called me on June 24th. His voice sounded tired. Mrs. Harland, I need to talk to you about something. Is this about the wedding? It's still happening, July 20th. Jasmine says she's not canceling. That surprised me. After the courtroom exposure, after Kevin walked away, I'd assumed the engagement was over. And you're still marrying her? Long pause. I don't know yet. That's why I'm calling. I need to understand what's true and what isn't. Jasmine says you're twisting everything. That the money she took was supposed to be her inheritance anyway, that you promised her years ago that she could use it for her wedding. I promised no such thing. She also says you were never diagnosed with cancer. That you made that up in court to gain sympathy. My hands tightened on the phone. Kevin, I can send you my medical records, signed releases from Dr. Chen. CT scans showing tumors. Pathology reports confirming stage 4 ovarian cancer. Would you like me to do that? Silence. Then, quietly, yes, please, because if Jasmine is lying about your cancer diagnosis, if she's lying about all of this, then I don't know who I'm about to marry. I sent him everything that afternoon. Complete medical documentation. The investment account statements showing unauthorized transfers. Screenshots from Jasmine's laptop. The emails where she'd called my life's work payment for damages. I sent it all and waited. Kevin called back 3 hours later. I could hear him crying, I'm so sorry I didn't see this. I'm so sorry I believed her. You trusted your fiancé. That's not something to apologize for. She told me you were confused. That you were making up stories because you were scared of dying. She made me believe you were the problem. His voice cracked. How does someone do that? How does someone lie that completely? Fear makes people do terrible things, Kevin. Jasmine is afraid. Has been afraid her whole life that she wasn't enough, that I didn't love her, that she was always competing with my patients for my attention. And she was right. I did choose work over her too many times. I did miss important moments. I did let my career matter more than being present for my daughter. That doesn't justify stealing from you. No, but it explains it. And right now, I need explanations more than I need justice. What are you going to do? About the wedding? About the money? Good question. What was I going to do? Let Jasmine marry Kevin using my stolen money to fund their celebration, show up and pretend everything was fine? Or do what Helen had suggested, expose everything publicly, make sure every guest knew exactly what my daughter had done? I don't know yet. But Kevin, I need to ask you something. Do you love her? Even after knowing all this, do you still love my daughter? I don't know how to love someone I don't recognize anymore. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have right now. He hung up. I sat in Andre's office, surrounded by his medical journals and family photos, and thought about love, about how I'd loved Jasmine fiercely while being emotionally absent, about how Andre had loved me despite my workaholism, about how Jasmine loved herself so little that she'd convinced herself theft was justified reparation. July 1st, 3 weeks before the wedding, Jasmine finally called. Mom, we need to talk. I'm listening. Kevin knows everything. He's threatening to call off the wedding unless I make things right with you. And what does making things right look like to you, Jasmine? I'll pay back the money. We can set up a payment plan, $500 a month or something. It'll take years, but I'll pay every dollar back. You stole $87,000 in 6 months. At $500 a month, it would take you 14 years to repay it. I don't have $87,000, Mom. I spent it on wedding deposits. The venue, the caterer, everything's non-refundable. If I cancel now, I lose it all anyway. So this wasn't about making amends. This was about minimizing losses. What do you want from me, Jasmine? I want you to not ruin my wedding. Kevin says you have every right to show up and expose me in front of everyone, to tell all our friends and family what I did. But Mom, please, this is my wedding day. Can't we just pretend everything's fine for one day? Can't you just let me have this? Let her have this. Let her marry Kevin using stolen money while pretending her dying mother wasn't sitting in the audience knowing the truth. Let her have her perfect day built on lies and theft and betrayal. And after the wedding? What happens then? Then we figure things out. I'll get a second job. I'll pay you back somehow. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. You can't fix this, Jasmine. You accessed my medical records illegally. You stole nearly $90,000. You tried to have me declared incompetent. The state's attorney is reviewing your case for elder abuse charges. This isn't something that gets fixed with a payment plan and an apology. So you want me to go to jail? You want to destroy my entire life over money? I want you to take responsibility for what you did. I am taking responsibility. I'm offering to pay you back. That's not taking responsibility. That's damage control. Taking responsibility means acknowledging that what you did was wrong. Not wrong because you got caught, but wrong because it hurt someone you claim to love. Jasmine was quiet for a long time. Then, in a voice so small I almost didn't recognize it, "Do you think I don't know it was wrong? Do you think I don't hate myself for it? Mom, I'm desperate. Kevin and I have been trying to get pregnant for 2 years. IVF treatments cost $68,000. I've maxed out 3 credit cards. I'm drowning in medical debt, and I look at you sitting on over $2 million, and I just thought..." She stopped, started crying. Real sobs that shook through the phone connection. "You thought I owed you that money," I finished quietly. "You thought your childhood pain entitled you to my life savings. I thought you wouldn't miss it. I thought you'd die soon anyway, and I'd inherit it eventually. I thought I was just accelerating the timeline. Accelerating the timeline. Stealing from your dying mother reframed as efficient estate planning. Jasmine, I'm not giving you my blessing for this wedding. I'm not pretending everything's fine, but I am going to make you an offer. One time, take it or leave it." "What offer?" "Come to my house, tonight. Bring Kevin. We're going to have the conversation we should have had 6 months ago. About Andre's death. About my choices as a mother. About what you actually need versus what you think you're owed. And then we're going to decide, together, what happens next." They came to my house at 7 p.m. Jasmine looked thinner than I remembered, dark circles under her eyes. Kevin held her hand, but there was distance in the gesture, like he was supporting her out of obligation rather than love. I made coffee, none of us touched, and we sat in my living room, surrounded by family photos that suddenly felt like evidence of failures rather than memories. "Before we talk about the money or the wedding, I need to tell you both something," I started. "I need to tell you about the day Andre died." Jasmine's face tightened. "Mom, I don't want to relive that. We're going to relive it anyway. It's been living between us for 6 years, poisoning everything, so let's bring it into the open." I took a breath. April 14th, 2019. I was working a double shift in the ICU. We'd had 3 trauma cases come in overnight, a car accident on the Dan Ryan. One of the patients was a 9-year-old girl named Maya. She was coding every few hours. Her mother was in the waiting room, terrified, begging us to save her daughter. "Mom, I know this story. You know part of it. You know Andre called me at 2 p.m. and said his chest hurt. You know I told him I couldn't leave. What you don't know is what happened after that call. I looked at my hands. At the nurse's hands that had saved so many lives but couldn't save the one that mattered most. Andre called me 3 more times. 2:30 p.m., he said the pain was getting worse. I told him to take aspirin and lie down. 3:15 p.m., he said he couldn't breathe right. I told him to call 911 if it got bad. 4:30 p.m., he called one last time. He didn't say anything. I could just hear him breathing, labored and scared. And I said, Andre, I can't talk right now. Maya's crashing again. I'll call you back. Tears ran down my face. I never called back. By the time my shift ended at 8 p.m. and I got home, he'd been dead for 3 hours. The coroner said he probably died around 5 p.m., an hour after his last call to me, an hour when I was saving a little girl I'd never met before instead of saving my husband. Jasmine was crying too. You never told me about the other calls. Because I was ashamed. Because every day for 6 years I've replayed those conversations and thought about what would have happened if I'd just left work. If I'd chosen him over Maya. If I'd been the wife he deserved instead of the nurse everyone else needed. Did Maya survive? Kevin asked quietly. Yes. She walked out of that hospital 2 weeks later. Goes to school now. Plays soccer, has a whole life ahead of her, and every time I think about her living, I think about Andre dying. I traded my husband's life for a stranger's child, and I don't know if that makes me a hero or a monster. The room was silent except for our breathing. Finally, Jasmine spoke. You chose the patient. You always chose the patients. Even when Dad was dying, even when I needed you, the patients always came first. Yes, they did. And I'm not going to tell you that was noble or right. It was who I was. A nurse first, a wife and mother second. That's the truth I have to live with. And die with. Jasmine said bitterly. And die with. But Jasmine, here's the other truth. The one you need to hear. Your father didn't blame me. In the last year of our marriage, before he died, he told me something. He said, Rebecca, your calling is saving lives. It's who you are. I knew that when I married you. I chose to love a woman whose heart was big enough to hold thousands of patients. Sometimes that meant I came second, but I never doubted you loved me. That's easy to say now that he's not here to contradict it. I walked to Andre's office, pulled out a box I'd kept locked for 6 years. Inside were letters. Dozens of them. Your father wrote these during his last year. He had heart problems starting in 2018. He knew he was sick. He wrote these to me in case he didn't get to say everything he needed to say. I handed the box to Jasmine. Read them, all of them. They're about our marriage, about you, about his understanding of who I was and what I gave up, and what he gave up by loving me. And then tell me if you still think I didn't care about our family. Jasmine opened the first letter with shaking hands. Her eyes scanned Andre's familiar handwriting. I watched her face change as she read, watched tears fall onto the paper. She read one letter, then another, then another. Kevin read over her shoulder, both of them silent. Finally, Jasmine looked up. He forgave you. For everything. For missing dinners and working holidays and not being there when he called. He forgave you because he understood your work mattered. Yes. But Mom, I'm not Dad. I can't forgive that easily. You stole my childhood. You were never there when I needed you. Every school play, every parent-teacher conference, every moment that mattered, you were at the hospital saving someone else's family. You're right. I was. And I'm not asking you to forgive me, Jasmine. I'm asking you to understand that my absence didn't mean I didn't love you. It meant I didn't know how to love you and be the nurse I needed to be at the same time. I made the wrong choice over and over, but it was never because you weren't important. It was because I didn't know how to split myself between two impossible demands. Kevin spoke for the first time in minutes. "Jasmine, your mom was a terrible parent in a lot of ways. But that doesn't justify what you did. You can't steal from someone and call it reparations." "I know that now. Do you? Or are you just saying what we want to hear?" Jasmine set down the letters carefully. "Kevin, I've spent my entire adult life trying to prove I deserved my mother's attention. I got good grades, I got a good job, I tried to be perfect, so maybe she'd finally notice me. And it never worked. She was always too busy. So when I found out she was dying, when I saw she had all this money saved from the career she chose over me, something broke inside. I thought, this is it. This is finally my turn. Finally, she owes me. But she doesn't owe you, Jasmine. Parents don't owe their children perfect childhoods. They do their best, and sometimes their best isn't enough. That's not a debt, that's just life." We sat in that living room for 3 more hours, talked about things we'd never said out loud. Jasmine told me about the nights she'd waited by the window for me to come home from late shifts, how she'd fall asleep on the couch because her bed felt too lonely. I told her about the guilt that ate at me every time I chose another patient over her school event, how I'd convinced myself that providing financial security was the same as being present. Kevin asked the question that mattered. "So what happens now? Do we cancel the wedding? Do you press charges? Do we try to fix this? Or do we just accept that some things are too broken?" I looked at my daughter. At the woman she'd become despite my failings as a mother. "I'm not pressing charges. The state's attorney investigation will run its course, but I'm not cooperating with it. I'm not testifying against my own daughter." Jasmine's eyes widened. "Why not? I deserve to be punished." "Maybe you do. But I don't have time to watch you get punished. I have maybe 10 months left. I'm not spending them in courtrooms watching my only child face criminal charges." "What about the money?" "The money is gone. You spent it on wedding deposits. I'm not asking for it back." "Mom, that's $87,000. You can't just forgive that." "I'm not forgiving it. I'm accepting it. There's a difference. You stole from me, Jasmine. That's a fact that doesn't change whether I pursue legal action or not. You'll have to live with that choice. And so will I." Kevin leaned forward. "Mrs. Harland, if you're not pressing charges, if you're letting the wedding money go, what do you want from Jasmine?" "I want honesty. No more lies, no more pretending. If this wedding is happening, I want to be there as your mother, not as the victim you're placating. And after the wedding, I want whatever time I have left with my daughter to be real, not performative, not guilty obligation, real." Jasmine was crying again. "I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I can look at you and not see everything I resented for 28 years. "Then we don't have anything, Jasmine. Because I can't spend my last months apologizing for choices I made decades ago. I can acknowledge them. I can tell you I'm sorry I wasn't the mother you needed. But I can't undo the past. None of us can. So we just move forward like nothing happened? No. We move forward knowing exactly what happened. You stole from me. I neglected you. We both made choices that hurt each other. And now we decide if there's anything left worth salvaging." Kevin stood up. "I need to talk to Jasmine alone. Can you give us a few minutes?" I went to the kitchen, heard their voices through the wall, urgent and low. Couldn't make out words, but the tone was clear. Kevin was drawing a line. Jasmine was defending her position. The conversation went on for 20 minutes before they came back into the living room. Kevin spoke first. "I'm going through with the wedding on one condition. Jasmine has to tell the truth. Not to all 200 guests, but to our families, both sides, before the ceremony. She has to admit what she did and why. No excuses, no justifications, just the truth." Jasmine looked like she might be sick. "Kevin, your parents will never forgive me. Your mother already thinks I'm not good enough for you." "Then maybe she's right. But if we're getting married, If we're building a life together, it can't be built on lies. I won't do to you what you did to your mother. I won't pretend everything's fine when it's not. And if I refuse, then I walk away. Today, right now. I love you, Jasmine, but I don't know how to love someone I can't trust. The ultimatum hung in the air between them. I watched my daughter's face cycle through emotions: anger, fear, resignation. Finally, she nodded. Okay, I'll tell them. But Mom has to be there. She has to be part of the conversation. Why? I asked. Because I need them to hear your side too. I need them to understand it wasn't just me being evil. There's context, history, reasons. Reasons aren't excuses, Jasmine. I know. But they're still part of the story. July 19th, the day before the wedding, we gathered both families at my house. Jasmine's friends who'd signed the guardianship affidavits, ashamed and apologetic. Kevin's parents, Claire and Robert Porter, polite but clearly confused about why they'd been summoned. My sister Teresa, who'd flown in from Atlanta and already knew most of the story. Jasmine stood in front of everyone and told them what she'd done. Told them about accessing my medical records, about the stolen money, about the guardianship petition, about the plan to put me in a nursing home. She didn't cry, didn't make excuses, just laid out the facts in a voice that shook but never broke. When she finished, Claire Porter spoke first. How could you do this to your own mother? How could you steal from someone who's dying? Because I was angry. Because I've been angry my entire life that she chose her career over being my mother. Because when I found out she was dying, I thought it was finally my turn to matter more than her patients. But that's not how it works, Robert Porter said. You don't get to steal because your feelings are hurt. I know that now. Do you? Or do you just know you got caught? Jasmine looked at me. Both. I know it was wrong. And I know I wouldn't have stopped if Mom hadn't found out. That's the truth. Claire stood up. Kevin, I love you. But I can't support this marriage. I'm sorry. I know you love her. But this woman is not who I thought she was. Mom, please. No, I'm not coming to the wedding tomorrow. Your father and I will not watch you marry someone who steals from dying people. I don't care what her reasons are. Robert nodded agreement. They left. Just walked out of my house without another word. Kevin's face was pale. They'll come around eventually. They have to. But I saw in his eyes he wasn't sure. Wasn't sure about his parents. Wasn't sure about Jasmine. Maybe wasn't even sure about the wedding anymore. The gathering dissolved after that. People made awkward excuses and fled. By 9 p.m., only Jasmine, Kevin, and I remained. Is it still happening tomorrow? I asked. The wedding? Jasmine looked at Kevin. He looked at her for a long time. Finally, he nodded. Yes, but it's going to be different than we planned. July 20th, 2025. The wedding day arrived like a storm everyone could see coming, but no one knew how to stop. I dressed carefully that morning. A burgundy dress Andre had always liked. Simple jewelry. Enough makeup to hide how sick I'd been feeling lately. The cancer was progressing. Dr. Chen had warned me that stress accelerates deterioration. The past 2 months had been nothing but stress. He arrived at Riverside Gardens at 5 p.m. The venue looked exactly as expensive as the $45,000 price tag suggested. White roses everywhere. String quartet playing softly. About 120 guests, I counted. 80 fewer than the original plan. Many people had quietly declined after yesterday's family meeting. Word had spread quickly about what Jasmine had done. Kevin's parents weren't there. Their absence was obvious. 2 empty seats in the front row on the groom's side where they should have been sitting. Kevin stood at the altar looking like a man who'd aged 10 years in 10 days. His best man, his brother Daniel, kept glancing at him with concern. I took my seat in the front row on Jasmine's side. My sister Teresa sat beside me, squeezed my hand. You okay? No, but I'm here. The ceremony was supposed to start at 5 p.m. At 4:50, one of the bridesmaids approached me. "Mrs. Harland, Jasmine wants to see you, in the bridal suite." I found my daughter standing in front of a full-length mirror in her wedding dress, a beautiful gown that had cost $4,800 of my stolen money. She looked stunning and terrified. "I can't do this," she said when she saw me. "I can't walk down that aisle knowing what everyone's thinking, knowing Kevin's parents aren't here, knowing that every person out there is wondering if Kevin's making the biggest mistake of his life. Then don't do it. Call it off. We'll refund what we can and move on." "But I love him, Mom. I really do love him." "Love isn't always enough, baby. Sometimes love gets buried under too much damage." She turned to face me. "Do you regret it? Marrying Dad? Knowing that your career would always come between you?" I thought about that question, about 32 years of marriage to Andre, about all the missed dinners and broken promises and times I chose patience over him, about the day he died alone because I made that choice one last time. No, I don't regret marrying him. I regret how I loved him, but I don't regret that I loved him. That's not the same thing. No, it's not. Jasmine looked back at the mirror. Kevin deserves better than me. Someone who wouldn't steal from their dying mother. Someone his parents would be proud of. Maybe. But Kevin chose you anyway. Even knowing everything, he chose you. That has to mean something. Or it means he's too loyal to walk away from a mistake. Before I could respond, Kevin appeared in the doorway, saw Jasmine crying, saw me standing there. "Is everything okay?" "She's having second thoughts," I said. "So am I," Kevin admitted. He came into the room, closed the door. "Jasmine, we need to be honest with each other. Really honest. Not the version where we pretend yesterday didn't happen. The real version. Okay. Do you love me? Or do you love the idea of not being alone?" Jasmine's face crumpled. "I don't know anymore. I thought I knew. But after everything that's happened, after what I did and who I became, I don't know if I'm capable of loving anyone except myself." "That's the most honest thing you've said in months. So what do we do?" Kevin looked at me, then back at Jasmine. "We postpone. Not cancel. Postpone. We tell everyone that we need more time. That we're not ready. That we want to make sure we're doing this for the right reasons. Kevin, we'll lose all the deposits. Everything's non-refundable. I don't care about the money anymore. I care about whether we're building a marriage or just going through with a wedding because we're too stubborn to admit we're not ready." Jasmine looked like she might argue. Then she nodded slowly. "You're right. We're not ready. I'm not ready. I need to figure out who I am without all this anger and resentment. And you need to figure out if you can actually trust me again. So we postpone. So we postpone." They stood there looking at each other with something like relief on both their faces. Then Kevin turned to me. "Mrs. Harland, we need your help. We need you to go out there and make an announcement. Tell them the wedding is postponed. Tell them it's mutual. Tell them we're taking time to work on ourselves." "Why me?" "Because if it comes from Jasmine, people will think she's running away from consequences. If it comes from me, people will think I'm abandoning her. But if it comes from you, her mother, the person she hurt most, maybe they'll understand this is about healing rather than hiding." So that's how I found myself standing in front of 120 wedding guests at 5:15 p.m. on July 20th, explaining that there would be no wedding today. That Jasmine and Kevin had decided to postpone. That they were committed to each other, but needed time to address some family issues before they could commit to marriage. I didn't mention the theft, didn't mention the guardianship petition, didn't air every piece of dirty laundry. Just said that sometimes love means being brave enough to pause instead of rushing forward into something you're not ready for. Some people nodded understanding. Others looked confused or disappointed. A few looked relieved, like they'd been dreading watching this train wreck happen in real time. Teresa stood beside me, solid and supportive. After the announcement, most people left quietly. A few stayed to talk, to offer support, to ask if there was anything they could do. By 6 p.m., the venue was nearly empty. Just me, Jasmine, Kevin, Teresa, and Daniel. We stood in that beautiful garden space surrounded by $62,000 worth of decorations for a wedding that wasn't happening. "What do we do now?" Jasmine asked. Kevin took her hand. "Now we figure out if we can build something real. Not a fantasy wedding. A real relationship. And if we can't, then at least we'll know we tried." They left together, still in their wedding clothes, to talk somewhere private. Teresa and I drove home in silence. When we pulled into my driveway, she finally spoke. That was either the bravest thing I've ever seen or the most foolish. "I'm dying, Teresa. I don't have time for foolish anymore. Only brave. Do you think they'll make it? Jasmine and Kevin? I don't know. But at least now they have a chance to build something honest instead of something pretty." Inside my house, I changed out of my burgundy dress and sat in Andre's office, surrounded by his letters. Thought about how he'd forgiven me for all my absences. Wondered if Jasmine would ever forgive me. Wondered if Kevin would ever fully trust her again. Wondered how many months I had left to see how this story ended. My phone buzzed. Text from Jasmine. "Thank you for today. For giving us permission to stop pretending. I love you, Mom. I'm so sorry for everything." I texted back. "I love you too, baby. We'll figure this out. Whatever time we have left, we'll figure it out together." 3 months later, October 15th, I sat in Dr. Chen's office listening to updated prognosis numbers that didn't surprise me. The cancer had progressed faster than expected. 4 to 6 months left, maybe less. The pain was getting harder to manage. I'd started hospice consultations. "Rebecca, we need to discuss end-of-life planning," Dr. Chen said gently. "Who will be your medical decision-maker? Who do you want present during your final days?" "My daughter, Jasmine." "Are you sure? Given everything that's happened?" "I'm sure." The truth was more complicated than that single answer suggested. Jasmine and I had been meeting twice a week since the canceled wedding. Sometimes at my house, sometimes at coffee shops, once at Andre's grave where we both cried and finally talked about the day he died without anger or blame. Just grief we'd both been carrying separately for 6 years. She was in therapy now. Individual sessions twice a week, working through childhood resentment and adult choices. Kevin was in therapy too. They'd decided to postpone the wedding indefinitely. Not canceled. Just postponed until they both felt ready, if that day ever came. "Mom's dying has been this weird gift," Jasmine had told me last week. "It forced us to stop pretending. Forced me to face what I'd become. I wish we didn't need your cancer to wake me up, but here we are." The state's attorney investigation had been quietly dropped. Insufficient evidence for elder abuse charges, they'd said, though we all knew the real reason. I'd refused to cooperate. Had written a letter explaining that pressing charges against my dying wish for reconciliation with my daughter would serve no purpose except punishment. Helen Foster had been frustrated. "Rebecca, she stole $87,000 from you. She tried to have you declared incompetent. She deserves consequences. She's living with consequences every day. She lost Kevin's parents' respect. She lost friends. She lost her own self-respect. That's consequence enough." The money was gone. I'd made peace with that, adjusted my estate plans accordingly. The house would be sold after my death, proceeds split between Jasmine and 3 nursing scholarships I'd established at Cook County Hospital in Andre's name. My investment accounts, what remained of them, would fund those scholarships and provide Jasmine with enough to pay off her IVF debts. Yes, IVF debts. The real reason behind everything. Jasmine had finally told me the full story in September. 2 years of failed treatments, $68,000 in medical bills. The desperate need to become a mother herself, to prove she could do it better than I had. To create the family she'd always wanted but never felt she had. I thought if I could just have a baby, if I could be the kind of mother you weren't, then everything would make sense, she'd said. All the anger, all the pain, it would have meaning. But I couldn't afford another round of IVF. And you were sitting on all that money from Dad's death, money that felt like blood money to me. So I took it. I told myself it was justice. It wasn't justice, Jasmine. It was theft rationalized as justice. I know that now. Kevin had stayed. That surprised everyone, including Jasmine. His parents had written him out of their will, refused to speak to him unless he left her. He'd chosen Jasmine anyway. Not because the wedding was postponed, but because he'd seen her actually try to change. She's in therapy. She's honest now, even when it hurts. She's working 2 jobs to pay back money to charity in your name, since she can't pay you back directly, Kevin had explained to his parents. They'd hung up on him, but he'd stayed with Jasmine anyway. Last week, they'd asked if they could get married at my house. Small ceremony, just family. Before I got too sick to attend, my sister Teresa, Kevin's brother Daniel, who defied their parents to maintain relationship with Kevin, a few close friends, the pastor who'd buried Andre 6 years ago. Are you sure? I'd ask them. You don't have to rush because I'm dying. We're not rushing because you're dying, Jasmine had said. We're ready now. We weren't ready in July. We were performing a wedding instead of building a marriage. Now we're ready to actually build something real. So that's what happened. November 3rd, 20 people in my living room. Jasmine wore a simple dress from Target that cost $60. Kevin wore a suit he already owned. No photographer. Teresa took pictures on her phone. No caterer. We ordered pizza afterward. No flowers except what we picked from my neglected garden. It was perfect. Pastor Miller had said something during the brief ceremony that stuck with me. Marriage isn't about perfection. It's about choosing someone even after you've seen their worst. Kevin has seen Jasmine's worst. Jasmine has seen Kevin's, and they're choosing each other anyway. That's not naivety, that's courage. I watched my daughter marry Kevin Porter in my living room and thought about all the things I'd missed in her life. All the school plays and volleyball games and moments that mattered. I couldn't get those back, but I was here for this. Present, fully present, not thinking about work or patience or anything except my daughter starting her life with someone who loved her despite everything. After the ceremony, Jasmine pulled me aside. Mom, I need to tell you something. The IVF worked. The last round I did before everything fell apart. I'm pregnant. 8 weeks. I started crying. Couldn't help it. When did you find out? 2 weeks ago. I wanted to tell you in person. Wanted you to know you're going to be a grandmother. I might not live to meet the baby. I know, but you'll know they exist, and I'll tell them about you, the real you, not the absent mother I resented, the woman who saved thousands of lives. The nurse who chose the hard path of caring for strangers even when it cost her family. I'll tell them their grandmother was complicated and flawed and human, just like all of us. We stood there crying together in my kitchen while pizza boxes cooled on the counter and wedding guests talked in the other room, mother and daughter, still broken in places that would never fully heal, but trying, finally trying to build something real instead of something resentful. December now, I'm in hospice care at home. Jasmine visits every day after work, reads to me from baby name books, shows me ultrasound pictures, tells me about her therapy breakthroughs. Kevin comes too, brings soup Teresa made, sits quietly while Jasmine and I talk. That's not a happy ending, it's just an honest one. And honest is all we really have. Now I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments. Have you ever had to choose between justice and mercy with family? Have you ever been betrayed by someone you love and had to decide whether punishment or forgiveness serves anyone? Hit that subscribe button if this story made you think about your own family complications, about the difference between consequences and cruelty, about how dying doesn't make you powerless, it just clarifies what actually matters. And remember, sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones carrying the deepest pain themselves. That doesn't excuse what they did, but it might explain it. And understanding might be worth more than revenge. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.